By the end of this video, you'll think twice before laughing at someone's misfortune. This is the story of a millionaire who made fun of the poor family sitting next to him in a 5-star hotel. The millionaire believed the poor family did not belong to that fancy place, and he made sure to make them realize that. The family left eventually, but that sweet mama from the poor family secretly altered the millionaire's bill. When he got to know the reason why she did that, he couldn't believe what started happening to him. This poor family entered a fancy restaurant to have dinner. The place was all posh and lavish, so this family was not used to places like this. But they were not here to blend in or anything. They were here to celebrate their daughter's graduation, so they tried to ignore the looks they were getting. While they were checking out the menu, this super rich family entered the restaurant. They were dressed in the best of the dresses and had this snooty look on their faces. They got seated right next to the poor family, and that's when things got awkward. The millionaire, who was the son of the rich family, started mocking the poor family. He made fun of their simple clothes, their choice of dishes, and everything. His parents were laughing at his cruel jokes. But did the poor family let it ruin their night? No. They tried to ignore the mean comments and just focused on celebrating. Eventually, though, they decided to leave. But they didn't leave just like that. The millionaire went to the bathroom, and that's when the poor family left quietly. When he came back, he was happy to see the poor family had left. But then he found out something crazy. When he asked for the bill, the waitress told him that the poor family had already paid his bill. And not just that, the mother of that family had left him a note. The millionaire was stunned, even more when he read the note. It read, "Remember where you came from, Bernard Campbell." The millionaire was confused. Now they know his name. But what was even more confusing was why they called him Campbell when that wasn't his last name. Bernard looked up from the note, confused, and looked at his dad. The color drained from his father's face. Bernard asked, "Do you know this last name, father?" But his father did not respond. He instantly knew something was wrong. When he asked again, Bernard's father grew visibly agitated and told him to stop asking about it. But Bernard ignored his father's discomfort. He pressed for answers. He wanted to know what the meaning was of that note. Then he turned to his mother for an explanation, but she also kept silent. Then she exchanged a weird look with his father. His father shook his head, and his mother let out a sigh. It was also confusing for him. What was happening? Then his mother said, "Maybe we should let him know." Bernard was so frustrated by that point, so he asked again about what they meant. And just like that, his mother told him something that shattered his whole world. She said that they were not his real parents. They adopted him when he was born. Shock reverberated through Bernard as the truth sank in. He was adopted. Bernard was feeling angry, betrayed, and hurt. How could they lie to him his whole life? Tears fell down his cheeks and his voice started trembling, but his parents' response was not what he expected. They stayed calm and silent like they didn't even care. This made him even more angry and hurt. At that moment, he didn't want anything to do with his parents. He just wanted to leave. Bernard declared he wanted nothing to do with them. Upon hearing this, his father kicked him out of the restaurant. He was left alone on the street, feeling lost and abandoned. When he returned home, Bernard discovered that his parents had frozen his bank accounts. It meant they had really given up on him. He was truly alone now. Bernard's life turned upside down the moment his parents cut off their financial support. They changed their contact numbers, changed the locks in their home. They cut him off from his life for real. It was like someone had pulled the rug out from under him, and suddenly he was left scrambling to make ends meet. He tried to contact his parents to plead with them to take him back, but his parents remained silent and acted like they didn't even know him. When reality set in, Bernard realized he had to do something to get money. He had no cash, no bank account. All he had was his home, so he decided to sell it. Gone were the days of living it up in his luxurious mansion, surrounded by all the comforts money could buy. Now he found himself holed up in a dingy studio apartment in a bad neighborhood. Once again, the money he got from selling his house was ending, so he had to get a job. But a job? And Bernard? He used to be a millionaire without working even for a day. He used to eat at the most expensive of places, wear the most expensive of clothes, and he would still have loads of money left. Now he had no degree, no job experience, no skills, no nothing. So you could expect what happened to every job interview he went to. Everywhere he went, he was rejected. With zero work experience and no college degree to his name, Bernard felt like a fish out of water in the job market. It was a bitter pill to swallow for someone who had spent their entire life coasting by on their parents' dime. With his back against the wall and no money in his wallet, Bernard decided to go to a local food bank to get something to eat. He was feeling more out of place than he'd ever felt before. He didn't want to be known or seen, so he was wearing a hoodie and a large baseball cap. But just when Bernard thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, he heard a familiar voice calling out his name from across the room. He looked up and he saw a face he recognized. It was the same woman who had paid his bill at the restaurant and left him that life-altering note. Bernard's mind was racing as he tried to make sense of it all. How did she know him? And more importantly, what was she doing here? Before he could gather his thoughts, the woman approached him with a warm smile, as if they were old friends catching up. This made him even more confused. With all his confusion and hesitation, Bernard confronted the woman. He was angry now more than ever, and he demanded answers to the questions that had been eating away at him since that fateful day. How did she know he was adopted? But instead of getting defensive, the woman listened patiently. She kept looking compassionately at him. Bernard poured out his frustrations. He shouted at her and told her everything that had happened to him since she left him the note. After venting about his struggles, he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. It was as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like someone actually understood what he was going through. Once he was done shouting at her, the woman reached out and placed a comforting hand on Bernard's shoulder. Her touch sent a shiver down his spine. He felt warm and calm after that. And then the woman broke the silence. She said softly, "Family sticks together, Bernard." Instantly, Bernard's eyes widened with astonishment. What did she mean by that? His skin prickled as a rush of emotions flooded back, washing over him. By now, he'd already cried and shouted in front of her, but now he felt like he was on the verge of a breakdown. The woman seemed to sense his emotions, so without skipping a beat, she began to explain. She revealed that she knew about his adoption since she was young. Bernard was so confused about this. How did she know all this about him? The woman smiled warmly before saying the sentence that shocked Bernard to his core. She said, "I'm your biological sister." His biological sister? This sudden revelation made him speechless. He stood there totally confused and full of thoughts and questions. The woman told him that her name was Angela, but everyone called her Angie, and then she went on to explain that she'd been adopted by another family when she was young, just like Bernard. Their mother had been unable to care for them, and so they've been separated and placed in different homes. Bernard was struggling to process this information. It was the last thing he'd expected Angie to say to him. She continued to speak, and Bernard listened intently, taking in every word calmly, but also with confusion. Angie explained that she'd only recently learned of Bernard's existence, and she'd been desperate to find him ever since. It was just a coincidence that they were at the restaurant that day. She said she never wanted to make their first meeting like that, or she wanted to reveal such sensitive information to him that day, but she was really hurt after Bernard treated them poorly at the restaurant. Bernard was feeling ashamed and sad, but at the same time, he felt comfortable in Angie's presence. She offered him a sense of belonging that he had never known before, and for that, he was grateful. But Angie was not done yet. She had a proposition for Bernard, one that would change the course of his life forever. She invited him to dinner at her place and offered him the chance to experience the warmth and love of a true family. Bernard was taken aback by the offer. He'd spent his entire life yearning for the love and acceptance of a family, and now it was here for him. Bernard was happy to go, so he accepted Angie's invitation. He helped Angie carry the groceries to her car, and while doing so, he couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that washed over him. How could he have found a piece of his past after all these years? All of this was so surreal for him. When Bernard arrived at Angie's house, he was met with open arms and smiles. Her husband and children welcomed him with the kind of unconditional love that he had only ever dreamt of. It was a feeling unlike anything he'd ever experienced before. Then they sat down to dinner. Bernard poured out his heart to Angie and her family. He shared about his struggles and fears with them, but instead of judgment or pity, he found nothing but love and compassion in their eyes. When Angie heard about Bernard's struggles, she suggested that he should come work at the fast food chain where she worked. They were looking for new waiters, and she was sure that they would take him. Bernard was so happy to hear it, since his employment problem was about to be solved. And as the evening drew to a close, Bernard knew that he had finally found where he belonged. With Angie and her family by his side, he felt like he had come home at last. That night, He slept like a baby, and it was the first time in days that he was looking forward to waking up the next day. When Bernard and his sister walked into the fast food restaurant, they were greeted with a warm welcome. It was a simple place, no flashy lights or extravagant decor, just fries, burgers, and hardworking staff. Bernard felt it was a great place to start his new life. Bernard quickly bonded with his new colleagues, who made him feel right at home. Within just a couple of weeks, he learned everything about his job and was comfortable waiting tables. But then, one day, Bernard's past came crashing back into his life. One day, Bernard was happily whistling while waiting tables when he spotted a familiar figure passing by the restaurant's windows: his wealthy adoptive parents. At first, they didn't recognize him in his worker's uniform, but when they realized who he was, they couldn't resist coming in to confront him. Bernard's heart sank as he watched them enter. Angie urged him to keep his head held high and to act like he was doing just fine and happy in his new life. She even convinced him to wait at their table, assuring him that there was nothing to fear. But as Bernard approached his parents' table, he could feel the tension between them. His parents wasted no time in launching into a barrage of insults and mockery. They belittled him for working in such a place and questioned his choices. It was so painful for Bernard to hear all that insult. It was at that moment that he realized that he used to be just like them. He was also once a person who used to insult people and judge them based on materialistic things. He felt a mix of emotions: sorrow, pity, and above all, anger. How dare they come here and treat him like this after everything he'd been through? Just as Bernard was about to unleash his pent-up frustration, he felt a hand on his shoulder pulling him back. It was Angie. She stepped in front of him like the true big sister she was. She called his parents out for their mean-spirited behavior and told them confidently that Bernard was now with his chosen family, the family he'd found in her. But Angie was not finished with the talking. She did as much as to escort Bernard's parents to the door and said that there was no place for people like them and a place of peace and love. He was also happy that now he had a niece and nephew. Everything in his life seemed perfect, yet there was still a nagging feeling that he was missing something. He would often play back the events in his mind that happened in the diner with his parents that day. Over the last few months, he'd experienced how life should be. Everyone should have a family that shows love and support to each other. But it was something Bernard nor his parents ever did. They were never a loving family. They always stayed distant and apart. He wanted to correct that. He couldn't just act like they didn't exist. After all, they were his parents. But how could they fix their relationship? For a few days, all Bernard thought about was this. He wanted to fix his relationship with his parents. Angie noticed his distress. He noticed that something was eating him up from the inside. So one day, she gently asked him what was up and why he was tense. Eventually, Bernard decided to tell her everything. They sat together over tea, and Bernard poured out his heart. He told Angie that he wanted to mend his relationship with his parents. Angie supported and encouraged him. She hugged him tightly and said that if that would make him happy, he should do it. In fact, Angie helped him plan how he should approach his parents. So one day, Bernard dressed up in his best clothing and left the home to go meet with his adoptive parents. Angie also went alongside him to support her brother. They rang the doorbell. When his parents asked him to come in and sit with them, Bernard took a deep breath and began to explain how he felt. He expressed his desire for them to be a loving family and revealed that their love meant more to him than their wealth. His parents were moved by his words. Even though they were cold-hearted, they still brought him up and made him the man he was now. They still loved him. Bernard's mother began to cry, and slowly but surely both parties began to realize the importance of family and the need to mend their relationship. Over the next few months, Bernard and his parents tried their best to rebuild their bond. They made sure that they showed love and support to each other whenever they could. They made them closer than ever. Eventually, their efforts paid off, and Bernard felt that now he had two families who loved him unconditionally. He was happier than he'd ever been before. Can you believe it? How a small piece of paper changed Bernard's life forever? It's small things like this that can change your life in the most unimaginable ways. The same thing happened with this girl. She went for a routine visit to the local convenience store with her family. Little did she know, they were going to become a millionaire. Click now to watch the video and see what happened.